Yeah, definitely.
All right. So
yes, frowned upon.
Join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Rykowski.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate the warm reception, the warm welcome. First I just want to thank, B-Sides Augusta for putting on this event, allowing a lot of us to kind of step out in front of the community really and kind of put some ideas out there and, hopefully get some feedback. And that's really what I'm here for today. I know it's kind of a catchy title, Weaponizing Our Youth, the case for integrated cyber ethics. But really I just want to kind of step out with this brief today or this talk today is just the fact that I'm trying to initiate a discussion here. So don't take anything I say here with any finality or any sort of like I'm providing a solution. I want to really kind of try to get the community engaged in this issue, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. So again, the talk is Weaponizing Our Youth, the case for integrated cyber ethics. I am Josh Rykowski. There's my email up there if you have any questions or comments you want to throw my way after the talk. Please go ahead and send them there. So a little bit about myself. So background, so Mark alluded to it. I am a programmer, definitely Python focused because, who really doesn't like Python, right? Python is where you need to be in my eyes. I'm also an educator. Spent some time teaching at West Point, teaching computer science, and really focused there on teaching the CS1 class, or the introductory computer science class, and trying to get those students focused and really excited about STEM. And that's why I put in there, I have a passion for STEM. But more importantly, I've got a passion to try to instill the passion in others for STEM. And so that's kind of where, kind of led me down the path to get to this talk. And of course, everyone has to have a hobby. And my hobby is, I'm also a reviver of dead arcade games, right? Yeah, exactly. Who doesn't like arcade games, right? Yeah, exactly. So that's actually a picture of my garage, a couple years old, actually. It's according to my wife, it's a disease, right? My first pitch was like, I'm just going to flip these, and I haven't sold a single one yet, so I've got a garage half full of arcade games. But again, just wanted to throw it out there, so you got my email address. If you want to play some arcade games, let me know. Which one? That's a Bad Dudes from the 90s, JAMA-based. So, yeah, good times, though. Which one? I do not. Great question so far. But again, I just want to throw that up there. Yeah, I could probably have a whole talk about that and how to revive old arcade games, but you know what, that'd kind of give away the tradecraft, and I'd be fighting all of you for the arcade games around the CSRA, so we'll see. Maybe that'll be a talk for next year. But, so why does this matter? So why am I talking about the fact that we're trying to weaponize our youth? And really, when I say weaponize our youth, I'm talking about we are trying to teach younger students, hacking techniques, both offense and defense. So we keep shifting this to the left in that education timeline, which is great. I'm all for it because, again, I want to go ahead and instill that passion for STEM, and this is one of those ways to kind of get our hooks into those young minds and say, okay, let's focus on science, technology, engineering, and math. However, in my eyes, there's a flaw in the process we're using currently, and that flaw is we're making an assumption that they have a fully formed or a more fully formed moral construct, which is definitely not the case down in the high schools or even younger than that. So that is part, so that's part of the issue, the fact that they have an immature moral construct. And the way we're kind of teaching now, to kind of give you an analogy, is it's like sitting a child down, talking to them about gun safety, talking to them about how to load a weapon, fire the weapon downrange, clear it, and then say, okay, we've now talked about this in a very nice environment, just you and me talking about it. Here's your gun, here's your bullets, the range is over there, and you say go. And the expectation at that point is for them to know how to do everything and to be able to do it complete. And I don't think we're kind of missing the point with that, and I'll get more to that in the rest of my talk here. So again, trying to highlight the fact that we're moving this to the left in this education timeline. So here are just a few examples that I found. So I'm currently involved in the AFA Cyber Patriot, which is focused down into the high school level. You also have Hacker High School, again, high school curriculum. You got some CTFs focused directly to the high school level, and then you got MITRE Cyber Academy. So again, these are very age-focused programs. They're focused at getting this education down into the high school level. However, they're making that age-agnostic assumption. They're making that assumption that we can teach kids these topics just like we teach adults these topics. And like I said, there's a flaw there. that adults have a little more fully formed moral construct and kids don't. They're still forming that construct, and so I think we need to get at that. And to get at that, sorry, I hit the button there a little. I'm gonna propose 3 tenets here in a second. However, look at that right there, right? Isn't that epic? Big wall of text. That is a professional organization's code of ethics. That's page 1 of 5 or 6, right? That's why I put up their code of ethics, TLDR. Way too much. I mean, this is the same thing as when you install software. I mean, who actually reads the end user licensing agreement? Okay, I've got one. Kudos to you, my friend. However, the rest of us are like, okay, where's the okay? Where do I click accept? And that's kind of where I feel the code of ethics are. It's like it's this big, long jumble of legalese, a lot of words in there, and I don't want to take the time to read it, and that's me saying that as an adult. Now imagine taking a high school student, dropping a code of conduct in front of them and say, hey, let's talk about this. You think they're going to read that whole thing beginning to end? Probably not, right? But what are they going to do? They're going to tell you they read it, because what do they want to do at that point if you're teaching them hacking? They want to hack, right? They're like, oh, okay, this is just a hurdle I have to get through to be able to hack all the things, like Ed likes to say. So they're going to say, yep, got it. Okay, you want to talk about it? I'll do that too. And really, I think that's the wrong approach at this level for these kids. So like I alluded to earlier, here are my 3 tenets that I feel we need to get at when trying to teach the cyber education down to this level. The first, I feel it needs to be application-based, right? We can't just teach ethics by itself and then stop there and say, okay, let's go on to the next subject. It's got to be application-focused or application-based. We need to provide them opportunities to fail constructively. Seems kind of counterintuitive, right? We don't want to fail. You know, we're taught from an early age, failure is bad. However, I'll talk a little more into that, and really the key point of that is fail constructively, and how do we provide that to them? And the last piece, of course, is mentorship. And that ties into the fail constructively piece. Because again, with mentorship, you want to be able to have someone there to kind of pick them up when they fall down, dust them off a little bit, have a discussion, and then send them back on their way so they can be a little better, have a better mindset when moving forward and they hit that problem again. Okay. So let's get dig a little deeper into the first one. So application-based. It's very clear, or it's very easy to see, that ethical dilemmas do not occur in a vacuum, right? If you're sitting there at home, doing nothing, TV's not on, nothing's going on, there's very little chance of you having an ethical dilemma. However, if you're out there doing something, hanging out with friends, making decisions, there's the potential for an ethical dilemma to occur. And that's one of the things I was talking about earlier, one of the pieces I was talking about that we're missing. We need to provide this integrated ethical training while teaching these kids these concepts and these topics. Because, like I said, these ethical dilemmas do not occur in a vacuum. We need to make sure that we integrate it and move forward. And like the second bullet says there, the ethics cannot be disjointed from the situation. So again, if we teach ethics by itself and then move on into the situations and continue to teach that, they're not drawing any correlations. They're not drawing they don't see how it applies. There's no application to it. And so without the application, they're left on their own to make a decision. Now this works when we have adults, right? Because adults have a little more fully formed moral construct to kind of lean back on. They're like, yeah, I've got a little world experience, I've got a little wisdom, I can sit there, I can take a look at it. Well, maybe I've seen this before, so then I can make a decision. Kids, not so much. They're still in the learn phase. They're still building that moral construct as they learn. And so again, I feel like ethics education sits at that intersection of the situation and ethics itself. So we cannot teach them disjointed. We're doing them a disservice by doing so. We need to make sure that we integrate it. And like I said, it helps the students draw the correlations, right? Sometimes learning is just doing a little pattern matching at first, right? You have different levels of learning. However, if we teach them the pattern matching enough, what will happen is they'll be able to take that pattern matching, and then when they get into an unstructured, ambiguous problem, they should be able to attack it, or at least dissect it a little bit, to say, okay, what does right look like in this situation? And sometimes it's not even right. Sometimes it's like, what is more right than less right? And again, gets that ambiguous piece of it. But again, so the application-based tenet is, like just to recap, ethical dilemmas don't happen in a vacuum, and we need to make sure we teach them that as they move forward, we teach them with applications. We show them how to apply ethics to their situations, as opposed to just talking about it, clicking OK at the end of the code of conduct, and then moving on to the cool things. So this brings me to my second tenet, the opportunity to fail constructively. This is one that's near and dear to my heart. First and foremost, because failing is easy, right? Try as we might, try as hard as we can, it is very easy to fail. I mean, I failed several times this morning when I hit the snooze 4 times, right? Failed to get up on time, failed to get up on time, It happens. It happens. So the catch, though, is how do we turn that failure into a learning point, right? This is the hard part. Like I said, failing is easy. However, learning from our failures or helping others learn from their failures is very difficult, but it's also very rewarding. Now, when I was kind of working through an analogy in my mind, I kept going back to scaffolding. However, scaffolding really doesn't quite get at the problem here. So you see, I've got this really cool picture up here. See, I was a prior engineer for a little while, did some construction, had some fun. However, what you see up there is what I call a concrete form, right? Scaffolding is what you put up when you want to clean windows on a building. It doesn't really help form anything, right? It's there temporary. So think of the opportunity to fail constructively as a concrete form. It's something I have to build to pour the concrete into, and then let it sit and wait and solidify, right? And so the opportunity to fail constructively provides that form. It says, okay, I see you failed, but let's go and talk about why you failed. Let's go and see, okay, maybe you didn't fail as bad as you did. Sometimes, we're our own worst critic, and, we can kind of not see the good from the bad. And so, but however, having someone there or a construct there to say, okay, you failed, and let's talk about it, and then let's talk about what right looks like in that certain situation. And that's where the concrete form comes in. It provides the opportunity for them to kind of lay that foundation, and then also for that foundation to solidify, because if you pull the concrete forms too early, your concrete's not fully set, and it'll fail. So again, the opportunity to fail constructively is just to make sure that we provide them the feedback in that. Now this ties into my third tenet here, and that is the tenet of mentorship. With this, we want to get inside their thought process. We want to see, what's going on, what's happening, how they arrived at the decision. So it's more so, and that's why I kind of fell in on mentorship. Because again, we don't want to just provide them a critique at the end, right? Because a critique is what? It's a one-way directive. It's like, this is what you did wrong, and this is what I think you should do to fix it. And what does that do to the student or the individual receiving it? Well, sometimes they're like, this seems like a lot of words. I don't have enough time. And you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and do it again. And so they kind of throw it out, or they flush it. But with mentorship, it allows you to open a dialogue with that individual. And again, this is difficult because it's a two-way street. It's just not you providing a critique of their performance. It's you saying, okay, let's sit down, let's talk about what went right, what went wrong, and let me see, okay, I see in this point you made this decision. Can you explain that decision to me? And then get inside that thought process and provide feedback. And sometimes your feedback is not well received because everyone learns differently, right? Everyone receives feedback in a different form. And so they can say, well, I don't understand what you're saying, or no, I don't agree with that. And there's that dialogue, that two-way dialogue. So, again, we just want to make sure that we initiate that dialogue and make sure it's not a directive. It doesn't end up as a directive at the end of the day. So the final takeaways, and again, like I said, I wanted to just mention that, I know this is kind of a quick one, but I was hoping to kind of initiate some discussion today, because again, what I'm providing here is not a final solution to what I see as a problem, but the initiation of a discussion. Also, as I was working through this, I realized that, I was focused at teaching this down to, handing this down to the high school level. However, this can be used anywhere and should be used anywhere on the education timeline. The only thing that changes are the nuances, right? Mentorship is still mentorship, whether it's superior subordinate or if it's peer-to-peer. At some point, you have someone with a little more knowledge than another person providing some feedback, initiating a dialogue. The same thing with failing constructively. Maybe people have a lot more wisdom, and so you can provide just a different viewpoint to them. But again, just to kind of tie back to my three tenets, I'm focused on, I want this to be application-based to fully integrate cyber ethics education. We need to provide them opportunities to fail constructively, again, to kind of learn from our mistakes. Don't just say that was wrong and move on. Say that was wrong, this is why, and let's see if we can do a little better next time. Basically building that concrete form to allow that foundation to fully set before moving on into something else. And then finally providing that mentorship piece where we open that dialogue with the individual and try to get that discussion going and not just making a one-way directive of, hey, this is what you did wrong and this is how you fix it, and then walking away and never talking to them again. So like I said, at this point, I'd like to open it up for questions, comments, put a little screen image up there. You can kind of, see if we can kind of pull out some comments, but please feel free. If you don't agree with what I have to say, say that to me now. I'm kidding. No, please throw the questions out there. I'd like to get this discussion going. Yes.
Okay, so what age groups are you thinking about most effective to start doing this? There's only a summer's difference between a high school senior and a college freshman.
Correct.
And I'm doing this at the college level.
Correct.
We're in our second year of cybersecurity club USC.
Okay.
And not only we're mentoring, we're trying to teach mentoring because that's what the profession needs.
Correct.
We need to train people to be mentors as well. And I'm seeing that to be kind of effective, but I'm not sure how much trying to teach ethics at that age, how much impact it's going to have, in high school or if you go earlier.
No, you bring up a very, very salient point, and you're right. I would like to take this as early as possible. The furthest left I can go in that education timeline. In a perfect world, and given with unconstrained resources, all that, I would take it as far left as possible. Because personally, I feel by integrating this early on, we would solve some other secondary and tertiary issues, misuse of technology, cyberbullying, so on and so forth. But I see it, I'd like to get it that far, to the farthest to the left as possible. However, the reason why I focus on high school is because right now that's where I see a lot of the programs are focused on, and that's where a lot of the resources are being driven towards. So that's why I fell in on high schools. However, I feel like what I said at the end there, the age-agnostic approach, I feel this can be shifted anywhere and just kind of be dropped. The difficult part of this, and what I didn't mention in there, is this is time-intensive, it's resource-intensive, and that's why I think a lot of programs have gone to the first lesson of the program is we're going to talk about the code of ethics. Okay, everyone raise their hand. We all understand what it said, right? Yes, okay, and then we move on. And I think that because that's the easy solution. But you're right. But this is time-intensive, resource-intensive, and it takes commitment from the instructor or the educator to make this happen.
These 3 years are some of my students. My student asked me, has my mentorship had any effect on your personal ethics over the course of the last year? Or do you think you're the same as you were when you came in?
Well, this is me personally. I'm a little older. Maybe a little older. So hopefully my moral compass has been set a long time.
Sure, and that's what I'm kind of getting at here. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And some of them are.
I'm sorry.
Smart as.
I would say I'm a little bit older, but so having someone there to advise you and is this actually going through?
Yes, I can hear it.
And being able to advise you has helped a lot. But I did have one of my own questions.
Sure.
One of the things that we had that is part of our curriculum is we had an ethics class specific to our computer science, computer science and technology. But most of the questions in that are not specific to technology. It's ethics or ethics in general. So it's not an industry issue per se. It's just an education issue in general. We need to start bringing ethics up to our kids.
Do you feel effective at the college level?
I mean, it's effective there, but it's one of these things that, kids are making decisions that can impact them for years, and I didn't take it until I was a senior in college. You probably don't want to wait that late.
Okay, Alex, what about you? You're younger. You're a freshman.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I can attribute my moral compass specifically to any one source, but definitely being exposed to the community at large over the past couple of years around security has definitely had an impact for the positive.
Sure.
But I can't place any particular class or structure that I've been exposed to specifically for teaching
Exactly, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. You're right. I think eventually we get to a point where at a certain point there's a kind of a failover where okay, no matter what we throw at them ethics-wise or ethics training-wise, like you said, your moral compass is already defined. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it is what it is, and there's very little you can do. At that point, it's like trying to steer an aircraft carrier, right? You don't make you talk about a 1-degree shift rather than 90-degree, and so it does make it difficult. But I do feel, again, back to what I was saying. If we move that further left, just exposing them to it, just exposing them to the situational base, not just the wall of text code of ethics, I feel will help. Maybe not with the course correction, but expose them to topics that they may not be thinking about initially. And that's what I'm trying to propose here. But great, I appreciate the feedback on that. I've got a couple more questions. I'll go. Yes, please.
Josh,
Yes.
just a couple of comments. This sounds like a lot like some of the discussion that comes up. It's like, when is it appropriate to teach offensive tactics or offensive operations in the cyber realm? What level is that appropriate, and is it what institutions given that power? Should we trust the students? How do we trust them?
Sure.
Is ethics training? I don't want to get into the merits of ethics. That's a big discussion that usually erupts into one way or the other. But this perspective is like that's the solution. So I think your question is, when is it appropriate to start incorporating ethics education? And from my perspective, even as a parent, as early as possible, with even just appropriate use of computing resources. Even in schools now, they have computers in every grade. They got smart boards and multimedia and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So maybe that's the appropriate time to start building that foundation of ethics. As they get older and into the secondary and post-secondary education, you start teaching them more skills with that foundation, and maybe a little bit more ethics along the way.
Exactly. Yep.
And you get to college level, it's like, okay, now you have all this, and you want to go the offensive route, hey, this is pretty serious. Your words, weaponizing style stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe now you decide some contracts, or maybe you need to do some kind of acceptable use thing that you can hold you responsible for.
Sure.
There's lots of different opportunities for this.
No, exactly. And the one thing I did leave out here purposely is the fact that I didn't build the backdrop. I'm saying we should teach it to high school age kids, but you're right. This could start at home, because again, it comes down to it's a very time intensive, resource intensive way of doing this. And so I'm not sure if the schools will be able to pick this up and run with it. So maybe it does start at home initially with some of those initial discussions. But exactly, I appreciate it. I think I had a question back here.
2 points. One was one of the challenges I think that we'll face with trying to push this, not just us but universally, is the relativism involved with ethics as far as backgrounds and culture.
Sure.
Is there going to be certain cultures that find something that we see as unacceptable, but that's part of the culture, and
Sure.
completely ethical. So I just think that's one of the challenges that needs to be recognized. But another point was you mentioned this. The way I saw it, and correct me if I'm wrong, treating this kind of like how we want security treated. Security is not a goal. Security is a property that should be ingrained in everything.
Exactly.
Same thing. Ethics is not a goal. It's not a lesson. It's a property that should be ingrained from the beginning all throughout.
No, I agree, and that's what I was, when I put that wall of text up there in the beginning and with the TLDR, I was trying to get at that, because when educating adults on this, it is an end or an end state or a goal, because again, I think the assumption has been made, a long time ago that adults have a more fully formed moral construct, and so we can allow them lean on that already. And all we've done is pick that whole construct up and dropped it onto younger education. And so you're right. It should be a state of mind or a property and not an end in and of itself. Fantastic. I appreciate that. All the way back.
So as far as incentives and disincentives for ethical behavior that you sort of convey to children, it's really easy to tell adults, hey, don't ruin your reputation, it'll make it hard to get a job, you'll
Sure.
be arrested, all sorts of fun stuff like that. And it's really easy to say, the disincentives for bad behavior and the incentives for good behavior. But what sort of things can you offer to someone in high school or middle school is that this is why you need to act this way? It's easy to say, what are you going to do for cyber ethical following the rules?
And that is a good point. Again, these are all fantastic points. And, that was one of the things I kind of wrestled with when coming up with this a little bit. Mainly because when you talk to kids that age and you try to incentivize or de-incentivize certain things, what happens? Right? When you're trying to get coercion out of someone, which is what I feel that process tries to get at, what happens? You get the fact that they follow the rules until you're not watching or until they figure out how to subvert them. And that's a good point. That's why I kind of wanted to steer away from that and get out of the, okay, do this and this is why, because you might get whacked or you might lose your online profile or I might delete your Facebook account, and get away from that and get into the, okay, you made that decision, let's talk about why it was bad. And try to instill the dialogue or the fact that, okay, in the world we live in, there's very little right and wrong. That's all on the very periphery. The rest of it's in the gray space in the center. And try to tell them, like, okay, you're going to be living a majority of your life in that gray space. And so the incentivizing gets at the right and wrong, but doesn't really address the large gray space in the middle. Does that kind of answer your question? I know it's a hard one, right? It's because again, it's about the mindset, and when you get to that age too, they're at different maturity levels. So it's hard to kind of come up with a one size fits all, and that's where I went through. Trust me, I went through several iterations until I came up with these 3 tenets I feel are worthwhile at that level. Alex.
To speak to that one and a little bit of what you were getting after, I've been carrying loaded firearms since I was in middle school, and so it's an organ, so that's like a cultural norm. And the culture is that firearm safety is a big deal, right? From that age, you're more responsible for that sort of thing. And I don't think we have a developed senior culture that understands cyber well enough, or what right is supposed to look like to provide that kind of leadership.
That's a good point as well. So again, we're still, even though we've been around for a while, we're still building tradecraft. We're still building, this foundation or the forms really, the concrete forms I alluded to. Thank you. Over here.
Hey, yeah, thanks everybody can hear me.
Yes.
So Josh, would you let your kid go into a lake if he didn't know how to swim?
Would I let him go into a lake if he didn't know how to swim?
Yes.
That's a very, very interesting question. The first answer for me is my wife present? No, I'm kidding. No, I jest because I am less risk averse than my wife is. And so I would say yes, because in my eyes, learning through situations, i.e., if I go in the shallow water, I'm fine. If I go a little deeper, I'm still okay. If I go into my mouth, not so good, let me back up. I'm more of the mindset, let them learn by doing. My wife is more risk averse and saying, okay, life vest, floaties, CPR mask, lifeguard on duty, the checklist goes on, right? And so I guess it depends on what your mindset is. And that's why I try to keep this, abstract enough to provide, not more of a directive, but like, hey, these are tenets. But I'm sorry.
So I apologize.
No, you're fine.
He was saying, the point of the discussion today is kind of when
Sure.
you give access advice to a child, it's the same throwing in the water while teaching how to swim. So it seems like you're arguing for the need for maturity models to be developed that we can globalize. Is that correct?
So I'm not so much a maturity model, because again, dealing with younger kids like that, you're not sure. It's very hard to well, there's a broader maturity range, and so I'm not going so much for a maturity model. I'm not saying if they're at this age, then they can hack this thing. If they're here, they can do this defense. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying it needs to, it's more ethics.
You're focusing on hacking, not necessarily information assurance and security and some of those stuff.
Okay, so I say hacking, but then let's back it up and talk defense. So let's say I'm looking at packet captures, right? And I see some stuff that I probably shouldn't in those packets. What do I do with it? That's still an ethical dilemma.
So you're focusing on InfoSec skills, it sounds like, not necessarily information security.
So,
Okay, everybody says this. I actually do this a lot with teaching kids, and the issue that we run into often is this right or wrong? Because as a parent, I don't know what you're teaching them. So when you have to say, I think information assurance is where it starts, teaching them as a fundamental skill set, and then elaborating on the maturity. Do you agree?
So I'm sorry, my hesitation is to the fact that I'm still trying to figure out, what parents actually send their kids to class without knowing, what's being taught. But again, my parenting model is different than others. I see where you're going with it. I don't know what the foundation is at this point. To be honest with you, I'm trying to be non-committal here on purpose because, again, I don't want to make a stand on something because this is nothing I've thought about yet.
Okay, I like what you're saying. I just think they need to be more developed with a framework.
Sure.
So thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. Thank you very much. Yes.
So to amplify a little bit on what you were saying with the pool, or lake rather, you're presupposing that the parent knows how to swim. With a lot of modern IT devices, that isn't the case. The parent can barely use them themselves. They don't have the full understanding of what can get their kids in trouble, as the rash of child pornography cases or pictures people have been taking of themselves is proving. And same thing with the carrying a loaded firearm. Because that is how you grew up, your parents taught you that, you're able to get that instilled at a young age. But when the parents don't know how does that get instilled at a young age, when the children are teaching the parents, where is that mentorship coming from?
And again, that's a very good point. And because in a perfect world, that mentorship should be coming from parents. First and foremost, that should be, the first mentor you have in this world should be your parents. However, that may not be the case in situations like this, or situations where, the parents may not have the same education that the kids have. So when they hit high school, it's, the disparity is large. So the parents, they don't want to be out of their comfort zone. So that is a good point. And that's where I was saying at that point, then the mentorship comes from the educator. And that's why I'm saying it's a resource-intensive process.